So welcome everybody. We will get started. Today our agenda is all about looking for some feedback from our Cohort 1 schools as we gear up to engage and invite school districts to join Cohort 2. We really want to get your feedback on how this process has worked for you. And so in our agenda that we put out, we have some group discussion questions that we want to start with first. And then after that, we will break into breakout rooms based on your position. And we have some other questions that we would like to ask in a smaller group. So to get started, we would love to ask everyone here. And if you are not comfortable unmuting and speaking out in the group, if you want to throw information into the chat, that is fine as well. We've also had some folks in our Cohort 1 groups already email us with their responses to these questions, which is also wonderful. But the first question, we really want to gather feedback from you, how the transition has been with working with your community partnerships, or what we're calling the mixed delivery system. So those would be those early childhood educational placements in your community, such as Head Start or preschool or childcare, a Boys and Girls Club or your local YMCA, where children are attending for their day or their general education experience and also receiving their special education services there. So I'd like to open it up to our large group for you to share how that is working for you in your catchment area.
Sandy, I don't mind going first. Sue Terrell up in Dover Foxcroft.
Thanks, Sue.
Overall, I think it's gone well once we ironed out the few bugs. My biggest concern is most of our partners all want related service times to occur at the same time because of their schedules. We have a lot that are morning only placements or 8 to 2, and everyone says you can't come from 8 to 9 and you can't come from 11:30 to 2 because of whatever they're doing. So when kids need services 2 times a week and you're limiting us to 2 hours, that's really tricky when you're trying to serve 4 or 5 places. So, and then fitting our own kiddos in too, because we have our collaboration plus our regular ed preschool setting in our building. So we're currently, my speech therapist is serving 7 different sites, R2 and 5 others. So that's the tricky part, is like people trying to like, okay, there's only so many hours in the day. We need them when they're with you. And we've worked out a couple where the parents do later pickups and the placement is allowing the student to stay. Like, so if it's a, 8:30 to 11:30 program, we're doing 11:30 to 12. So the student isn't missing any of their programming there and gets their therapy right after. And we're doing that with our afternoon pre-K kids here on our campus as well, having the parents bring them in 30 minutes early and doing the service prior to. So again, they're getting full advantage of their educational time. So, but that's kind of been my only bugaboo, I guess I would say, is just trying to figure that out.
Thank you for sharing that, Sue. Appreciate that. And I don't know if we were exactly going to like spitball solutions, but we can definitely, if you are running into a situation where you are not able to provide services because of that, we would want you to reach out to us so that we can help you work through those problems. But Sue, it sounds like that's something you've been able to manage so far. Anybody else?
I can go. I would say we have the exact same situation because I think it was Deb that put something in there about how it's nap time and rest time and lunchtime. So it's pretty similar schedules. So the bulk of the services in the community are taking place in the morning. And similarly, we have like a student whose family opted for some hybrids. So some of the services are at the pre-K in the morning, and then parent transfers the child from the pre-K to our school for clinic-based services. So we're kind of working around it by being creative and working around the child's schedule and the family schedule, but very similar.
Thank you, Beth. Anybody else want to share how this is working for them? Even if it's working perfectly, we'd love to hear that.
At RSU 29, we have made some great partnerships, few kinks at the beginning, but I think we've worked those out, and we haven't had any issues providing our related services, and things have been going well so far.
Have people generally been paying tuition to the providers? How has that worked? So you have in your IEP team said this child needs 9 hours of program or 15 hours of programming, and we're gonna dose in some speech therapy. How have those, have you just kind of contracted with the private provider for 9 hours or 8 hours or however many hours?
Yes, we have done contracts for so
And-
many hours, or in our case with ACAP, it's been a flat fee for the week, up to 19 hours, I think is what that includes.
Has the price of that service been in your estimation? And I know we might not have business managers, or is the price of that coming in less than your per pupil cost, more than your per pupil cost? Have you
I have
idea?
not calculated that, Erin. I know it's $122 a week, and what we're paying for the daycare is per hour, and it's the same. So what we contracted for both came out equal.
Thank you, Renee.
You're welcome.
Beth?
I have a question actually for the group on this one, and looking for guidance. A lot of our children were already placed in preschools, so they are SAUs offering to offset those 9 hours if they are not asked about that. And every IEP for CDS was written for transportation. I only have one who's asked for reimbursement for transportation, but I'm wondering how far districts are going. I'm right now if they ask for it, I'm doing it, but I'm not covering it out front if they're already placed.
I'd like to respond to that. At VZ, we've been very fortunate, even though we had some parents have CDS on their IEPs when we received the IEPs, parents have opted to transport their own children, which is, I thought, a very interesting response. Mainly because they wanted to be able to come on their schedule. And that worked perfectly. We also had parents opt to keep their children in our program longer than in the out of district programs. So the fact that they were able to get more time in program here at our school was an advantage for them, which also helped them with the transportation piece. So it was a win-win on both sides. And so we've not had any transportation costs. We've also had no additional cost for programming because we've been able to provide the programming here.
I will say that in terms of CDS, the transportation written on the IEP, because CDS operates really frequently like a medical model, that transportation on the IEP is typically about main care reimbursement in a lot of cases. It's not about specialized transportation. So it's important for people to understand that. And for the conversations, we went over all these scenarios around, you don't necessarily have to provide transportation. You do need to make sure that children can access services, and that looks like a million different things in a million different cases. So in CDS, also, lots of parents are wanting to transport their children. In some areas, there's challenges because they don't have vehicles, in some places and in some families. But are you generally, Beth and others, amending the IEP and providing that explanation as you're potentially taking specialized transportation off of an IEP?
That's why I asked the question, Erin, because you and I talked about this. I see moving forward that transportation is similar to transportation for school age. Moving forward, if there's an obstacle to accessing those services, then certainly transportation is provided. So I would like to do that, but I also wanted to hear from the group as to whether or not that would be something that we would be sort of in our decision-making process universally doing.
Erin, I am leaving it on the IEP and leaving it up to the parent. If they want reimbursements, then we are willing to provide reimbursements. Thus far, our parents are saying no.
I think that's going to be dependent on where you live and what kind of resources parents have and what kind of transportation is provided and what's available in your area. And it's definitely part of the conversation that we have to have moving forward is the kind of global approach CDS has taken to putting that on the IEP is not really in alignment with obviously IDEA, right? And MUSER around what transportation, specialized transportation, and those of you who are in schools know that, you put that on an IEP when someone needs a special kind of transportation or special special accommodations. So it's just one of the things we're going to be navigating and potentially having to kind of talk about how we're going to talk about that moving forward, and that kind of strategy CDS has sometimes of just globally making and because of the nature of how those services were delivered. Anyway,
and Erin, Deb Mullis did put that in the chat about maybe a future conversation about transportation to services and how that's documented versus specialized transportation on the IEP.
Yeah. I heard from Beth and I had an opportunity to talk about how she's been making some really nice headway in developing relationships with families in a way that obviously doesn't really happen prior to that transition meeting prior to now. And I just wondered if others are having that experience around kind of opportunities to connect with parents and how they're kind of responding to this change globally. Just kind of wondering about that.
I'll jump in since you mentioned our conversation. Our families have been very, very, very appreciative of the opportunity to seek the services locally. It's been a rare occasion when someone's asked for something that was not reasonable. I think our greatest challenge community partnership wise are agencies who have provided services through medical model, and families are, so we knew about our children coming into this with CDS services. I'm now learning about our Part C transitions, but what we didn't anticipate were the number of students who were receiving services through the medical model because they weren't able to get providers through CDS. So the migration from those agencies like York Hospital in town, which is not a CDS provider, so they don't automatically have other children in the queue waiting from other areas. So I think that's been challenging and has been a concern for those providers. And they've become very protective of their patients But otherwise, it's been a very positive experience.
I think there's a role for those medical providers in this work because as we know, there's not enough of providers in general. And that'll be an interesting thing to navigate, Beth, if, again, the interesting shift is that we're looking beyond our school to find school and experiences and programming and how we support kids. And that's very different from what we've all done for 30 some odd years in Maine. And I think, I think there's a lot of CDS staff who are really worried that, there's not going to be work for them. And I always say to CDS staff, there is plenty of work for all of us to do in this age group. So please be rest assured that we all need to lock arms and pitch in so that our kids get what they need. And then what is going to be really fantastic is how these children transition into your school systems in kindergarten in a way that's been much different than it has been historically.
Yeah, I would love at some point some guidance on contracted rate of charges by contractors, because I think, like in York Hospital's case, they are able to bill insurance more. And in my work in Kittery, where I'm exclusively relying upon contracted services, the rates are all over the place. And some of those people are CDS contractors. And so I would just love some framework to help us eventually to determine whether or not there's sort of a standard rate for us to be considering for reimbursement, or whether or not we go with what we need to do, which is what I'm doing right now. But like, I'm sure that's why York didn't become a CDS contractor.
That is a really great point. We have a rate sheet in CDS. That is what we use to access these services, and we can provide that for all of you. We also have a Maine Care rate sheet service and how much Maine Care is providing those services for. I will tell you that Maine Care, as many of you know, because you saw 25% increase on your seed this past year because the rates rose in Maine Care. They did an analysis and so their rates have risen higher than the rates that CDS can provide right now. But we can give you those two rate sheets so that you know what CDS is contracting with that same provider, which will give you a little bit of leverage in terms of having that conversation if they're trying to maybe triple the price. I don't know. I don't want to think people are doing that, but we can provide those for you.
Okay. I'd love that too for school psychologists.
School psychologists, I will let you know. We have a rate that we provide, and there is something in CDS that we have tried to, in the last several years, tried to get very much under control, and it is called a non-standard rate. And what I can tell you about school psychologists is that we're paying more based on where they are in the state. So I am paying much more in Machias for a school psychologist to go up and provide an evaluation because typically those kids had to drive to Bangor to get an evaluation. So we will give you that information as well. School psychologists, because there's so few school psychologists, they can sometimes negotiate a higher rate. There's also other non-standard rate things that people request, such as time paid for travel and alternative mileage reimbursement. That's something that we navigate in CDS frequently. And we have to, really weigh the decisional balance of like, how much do we need the service? How many kids are going to be served? What's that impact on the budget? But again, I think that the expansion of who's providing these supports will kind of in the long run hopefully balance out those things so that we can be kind of have a standardized experience.
Okay, we had another question that we wanted to pose to the large group about sharing with us how you were approaching programming for 3-year-olds and what that experience has been. Remember, we're gathering your feedback and also looking to support you and also future cohorts.
Our kiddos are integrated into our program, our pre-K program at our elementary school with 4-year-olds, a few of them. A few of them are at a local daycare, and a few of them are at our CAP program. So it's where they are at. But the kiddos that have integrated into our pre-K are making great progress being with their peers.
I would say that we're very much the same. Our 3-year-olds have integrated into our programming. We also have a few at local daycares. And I would concur that they are doing really well with kind of rising to that level of the 4-year-olds that are in their group. Some of the 4-year-olds have even become little peer mentors, which is really fun. So they're doing really, really well. It's working well.
Thanks, Scott. Bye-bye.
Question for both of you who just shared, are your 4-year-old programs universal? And are you full at 16 children per class?
We are, Renee, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you wanted to go first. We are, we're 16, 16, and 15, just because we just lost one student. So, but we have a waiting list, so that won't last very long. And yes, they're integrated programs.
So your 3-year-olds are like the potentially the 17th child in the room.
Correct.
Okay.
Ours are 16 and we have half-day programs, so there's 4 groups and universal, no wait list right now.
Yeah, we have 2 programs at each of our schools and at each of our 3 elementary schools. So there's 6 programs running and they're half days as well.
Do your 3-year-olds go shorter, like less amount of days in the week, or do they go?
Ours do not. Ours are going the same as the 4-year-olds, and they're doing really well. We just have one that has pretty high sensory needs. That one is going on a little bit of an abbreviated day, but we've already worked that programming up, so I'm sure it won't be long, and he'll be there the same amount of time. But it's just the one. The rest are on the same half-day schedule.
Our 3-year-olds go for a shorter amount of time.
So do they go like less number of days, like 2 days a week or 3 days a week, something
They
like
go,
that?
depends on their need. Some of them are 4 days for a longer amount of time. Some of them are 5 days for a shorter amount of time. It's all individualized.
As it should be. That's so
Yeah, I
exciting.
love it.
In York and Kittery, we have not gone beyond the 16. And so most of the 3-year-olds are attending in private pre-Ks. And that's where the tuition agreements have come into play. And it's been, really individualized by the program that they're attending and what they are able to tolerate and benefit from. So I would say it's very individualized for the schedules that the children are on. So that, I think the 3-year-olds have been the hardest group to program for. And then I have had several families actually say that they didn't think that their children were ready to access preschool yet. So I've just been documenting that in the written notice. They are accessing their services in more of a clinic style model, but I've just documented if the parent did not choose to have them enroll in a program at this time.
In 35, a little complicated. One of the issues that we have 3 sections of 3-year-olds at 3 days a week. And then we've had universal pre-K for 4-year-olds for about 50 years. The issue, I would like to integrate my 3-year-olds. The issue is we take so many out of unit kids, like 20 of them, that we don't have room. So next year, when hopefully there's some cohorts around us that start pre-K, that'll sort of remove that, and then I can take a look at the 3-year-olds and what we do with them. We did purchase a bus and we transport our 3-year-olds in for services, and we have very few kids out on mixed delivery, maybe like 5, where we send the services in.
Would you say that in terms of your children, preschool age children that are attending outside of your catchment area, would you say that that is a very small number of children based on your caseload, and how have you been managing that?
So when we originally did our MOU with CDS, we put in our MOU that we weren't going to be able to serve any kids out of catchment area right now. I think there's only 2. One's at Head Start up in Sanford, and the other is actually at a daycare in New Hampshire.
And so CDS is programming for those children.
We've had that discuss. Yeah, they know about them. So, and then we'll manage the case. And I don't know, or maybe you can answer, I don't know what to do about a kid who's in a daycare across state lines.
Well, I think we're all navigating that, or at least you and Beth are navigating that. I know you and Beth are. I think Beth, you can explain, but I think you've been offering some clinic-based services where the parents have been transporting in to provide those services since they're out of state, and that's been working well.
Yeah, where I've got Kittery and York, for starters right now, just because Kittery didn't have staff, we've been utilizing a lot of York services to cover Kittery, which eventually has to come to a screeching halt.
Mhm.
But if the children are attending, for instance, if they're attending a pre-K in your town, Scott, I'm offering clinic-based services. So I'm really going with more the school age model, where they can come back, they can access, as opposed to, because I know you've got a couple of our kids from York, you've got one kid from Kittery in your special purpose. But if they're attending a pre-K in Elliott or South Berwick, it is not efficient for me to send a speech path, for a half an hour ride to come down, service that child. So I'm offering clinic-based services if they're at Waldorf or one of those places. And then if they are attending in York and they are Kittery resident, right now I'm picking them up under York services. And then I'm going to tease it all out after we've got staff officially hired in Kittery, and we, can make a better decision-making tree for that.
Yeah. Beth, actually, I was going to jump in. If you send me a separate email, I can go over some of the rates that I pay. I get a familiarity with that, and I can help you with non-standard. I can help you with the CDS stuff too, just because I've been working on those rates. So, but the other interesting thing that you just said, see, I want to get to a point where if you've got kids in Elliott and South Berwick that need services, that I'm providing those services. And then the same thing, if I have a kid in a center in Kittery, right? That's where I'd like to get to.
Absolutely. I agree. Question for you. I know I just interviewed one of your speech paths that's offering services for you part-time. And this is really a question for Sandy too. If they're a New Hampshire-based speech path, what are we doing for licensing for contracting?
For right now, we're not doing anything because that's very complicated. And typically, I would say that those clinicians that are on the border potentially may have certificate or licensure. It's not certification, it's licensure in both states. We know like Presence Learning, they're all over the place, yet they all have to have Maine licensure. I do think that we're going to have to address that at some point, but at this point, we know they have a license. We do also have, children who attend out of state who get provisions of services from other, licensures. So it's not something that we're going to worry about now, but it's definitely something we have to address moving forward for the border towns, for lack of a better word.
You know, I mean, the other thing is there's just a change in the OT rules where they're starting to do reciprocity, so we can just keep our fingers crossed and hope that that happens for speech too. So, don't know.
I work with licensing and registration. I'm working on a project right now for ASL interpreting. So I can ask them about if there is consideration of reciprocity, because we know there's those two, all three, OT, PT, speech, right? There's a dearth of those professionals nationwide. Also, school psychologists, there's working on a reciprocity for that as well.
Okay, I think it's time that we move to our breakout groups. So we do have questions for our facilitators to ask. And I think, Jen, did you put those?
They are
Yeah.
in the chat, but you'd have to
There.
scroll up to the beginning.
Okay.
I have
Um,
my questions on a separate doc, so I can take my notes.
Okay, so
Okay.
the different groups are for superintendents, and then there's one for special education directors or special educators. There's one for preschool teachers or your transition leads, and then there's fiscal and data as well. So Jen, can you open those
What
breakout
are the
groups?
numbers, Sandy?
Oh, they're done by numbers, huh?
I don't know. We're gonna scroll down to the bottom.
Okay, there you go. If you scroll down to the bottom, you can
Yeah.
find the group.
Got it. Okay, everybody, see you soon.
CDS folks, you can join whatever room you feel like. If you're unsure.
Jennifer, just because clearly I wasn't paying attention to the directions.
That's okay. That's why I'm staying
Me
on.
either, so tell us how to do
I'll
it.
just hang, I don't mind hanging out with you
I have
here,
scrolled
but
back and forth and up and down, and I don't see an option to join a breakout room.
I know.
All right,
So-
so if you scroll, that's all right. I was confused because I was trying to figure out how to assign myself somewhere. So I can assign you guys to the room. So Scott, I'm going to assign you right now to the special educators. So I'm going
Yeah.
to send you there. And Joe, I'll send you with the superintendents.
Yeah, thank you.
And Tim, I'll send you there as well. And Sue, I'll make sure you go to the special ed directors.
You got it.
Same with Deborah Jean. Okay, and you guys can go wherever you want to go.
So that's the problem.
Yeah, I don't know
And
how
we
to do
don't know
that.
how to get there.
Yeah,
So where do you want, which group do you want to go to?
I mean, we're
We
directors
don't
by
care.
nature.
Yeah, we're directors by
Okay.
nature, but put us wherever you think it might be helpful, but we didn't see an option to go to places.
Yeah,
All right, I'm gonna send you to different places.
Okay,
Okay, you're leaving now, Deb.
thanks,
okay,
Glenn.
good.
It's like Glenda the Good Witch here.
And Gail, I'm going to send you to superintendents. And Tammy, I'm gonna send you to special educators.
Thanks.
I'm gonna check to make sure that I don't end the meeting for everyone and their brother, but it looks like we're the last ones in, Gail, so
I'm out.
have a good night. Take care.
Thanks. Hey, look, first one's back.
Well, I think a lot of people just,
They're
We're done.
ignoring you.
they were just done. They just logged out because it's 4:02
Okay.
and everyone's like, yep, done.
Oh, that's right. I didn't even look at the time. We were having a great conversation in our
We
group.
did. I took a ton of notes, Jen, so I'll type them up in the morning and send them to you. They had some wonderful ideas.
Oh, we had a great group of people too, expressing like things that they wish they were, actually, it wasn't even things they wish they had known. It was like what they found out that they truly enjoyed, which was nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what Cheryl brought up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. How fun little 3-year-olds can be.
Yes. Not scary after all, especially for a
No.
40-year-old veteran teacher. No problem.
So I think everyone is just free to go and enjoy your evening, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
All
Have a
right.
good night.
Thank you.
Bye.